Chapter 41. Juliet, suit slathered, helmet discarded, is drawn to a pale green glow in the darkness. As her senses return, she realizes that her helmet had been distorting her vision. The stench of her drenched suit follows her, and she hurries towards the stairwell, feeling an itch on her skin and a burning sensation in her throat. Desperate to escape the toxic air, she removes her bulky, fetid outfit with a knife. Now barefoot, she descends the stairs, feeling the coolness of the steel against her tingling skin. Reaching level 6, Juliet stops to rest and removes the remaining parts of her protective suit. She considers entering the apartments but feels a repulsion towards the upper levels, preferring the safety of the deep. She is driven by hunger and thirst, longing for water and food. On level 13, Juliet hesitates. She wonders if the layout is the same as her own silo and feels a sense of familiarity. Though it is dark and stagnant, she shouts out for help, imagining herself as a child running through these halls. On level 14, she searches through offices and workrooms but finds no coveralls. She settles for a purple tablecloth to cover herself. Forming a makeshift belt and headscarf, Juliet feels a sense of accomplishment at solving one problem. Descending to level 15, Juliet's exhaustion catches up to her. She rests on the landing, realizing her weariness. Rather than exploring for a bed, she decides to sleep on the steel grating, using the tablecloth for warmth. Drifting off to sleep, she briefly fears never waking up, joining the other lifeless residents of this strange place. Chapter 42. In the dimly lit room of the silo, Knox, a strong and bearded man, sat at a table facing McLean, the small but imposing woman who held control over the silo's supplies and fabrication. They were discussing their plans, their voices carrying the weight of the forbidden words they spoke, uprising, setting things right. As they looked over the blueprint stretched out before them, Knox noticed the age in McLean's eyes, the wrinkles etched with years of hardship. Knox, realizing his own youth in her presence, tried to demonstrate his wisdom and determination. McLean, knowing the divisions within the silo, shared her insights. She believed that while the mids, who aspired upward without true understanding, might be reluctant allies, the toppers, who lived in sight of those who had been lied to, would be more inclined to join their cause. As they worked out the details, Knox realized how McLean's presence inspired loyalty among her people, just as his own presence instilled fear. They agreed on the plan, a power outage followed by a goodwill mission led by McLean, which Knox would follow with the rest of their group. Chapter 43. Juliet descended further into the silo, her senses awakening to the scent that filled the air, the rich, rotting stench of the dirt farms. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, spurring her on. As she reached floor 28, the smell grew overwhelming. This was the smell of death, of funerals, of soil turned over. Stopping on floor 30, the hydroponic farms, Juliet tried the doors, but they were locked and the darkness inside concealed the mysteries within. Venturing towards the sound of a faint whir, she entered cautiously, leaving her only tool, a knife, as a makeshift doorstop. The green emergency lights did little to alleviate the oppressive darkness, but the sound of movement, something other than herself, gave her a sense of relief. It meant she wasn't alone. Pipes dangled like ropes, devoid of the plants they once nurtured. But there was water, stale and brackish, offering her some respite. She drank until her thirst was quenched, her hope rekindled by this newfound resource. Before leaving, Juliet fashioned a rudimentary thermos from a section of pipe to carry some water with her. She realized that with water, she might have a chance at survival, maybe even enough time to uncover the secrets of the silo. She retrieved her knife and descended further, arriving at floor 34, the source of the smell. As she approached the door, she heard the whirring sound grow louder. Opening the door, she peered into the dimly lit farm, lush vegetation reaching out towards her. Juliet cautiously explored the farm, feeling the leaves brushing against her arms. The scent of rot filled the air, the sweet decay of fruits and vegetables. And then she heard it, the click of a door closing. Darkness descended, plunging her into uncertainty. She could hear her own heartbeat, her breathing, and the whirring of the pump. Fear consumed her, but she reminded herself that the darkness held no ghosts, only the unknown. Suddenly, an arm reached over her shoulder, startling her. In her panic, she lashed out, only to realize that she had mistaken the turnstile for an intruder. Embarrassed, she made her way through and was relieved to see the light again. As she exited the farm, Juliet reached for her knife and thermos. Both were missing. Panic surged through her veins. Had they fallen or been taken? Her heart raced, and then she heard something. Footsteps, running, echoing in the stairwell below her. Chapter 44. In supply, the forbidden weapons are assembled, their barrels still radiating warmth from their recent manufacturing. Knox gingerly handles one of the guns. It is the first time he has ever held such a deadly device, understanding why they are prohibited. He realizes killing should require more than mere pointing and pulling a trigger. A supply worker arrives with a tub filled with the heavy cylinders that serve as ammunition. Knox takes one and questions its safety. The worker explains the force that needs to be applied to activate it before instructing everyone to wrap them up inconspicuously. The plan is for the slower climbers to go first, followed by the stronger climbers. They hope to converge on level 34 simultaneously, making their intentions clear. He still hopes violence can be avoided but senses the growing anger and willingness among the group to take lives if necessary. Chapter 45. Juliet, standing alone in the stairwell, is struck by a sudden realization. There are other people living in the silo with her. She desperately chases after the retreating footsteps, unable to shout for them to stop. The fear of never finding them or being found by a group with malicious intentions consumes her. With her knife in their possession, Juliet contemplates the dangerous possibilities. Navigating through the levels with swift agility, Juliet's adrenaline-fueled descent brings her closer to the fleeing footsteps. Finally, she hears a door slam, and upon reaching the door on level 34, she struggles to open it. With a forceful yank, the door flies open, bathing the surroundings in blinding light. Overwhelmed by the illumination, she enters cautiously, finding evidence of someone securing the door from the inside. Amidst the humming of electrical machines, Juliet's call for anyone present echoes faintly through the air. Making her way further, she witnesses rows of servers and realizes she is in the IT department of level 34. Suddenly, a scraping sound catches her attention, guiding her toward a man wrestling with a metal grate covering a hole in the floor. With adrenaline rushing through her veins, Juliet manages to prevent the grate from closing, engaging in a tense encounter with the man who emerges. Despite the initial tension, Juliet introduces herself as Jules and tends to her wounded hand. The man, whose name is Solo, appears more frightened of her than she is of him. He admits to being alone for years and expresses curiosity about the outside world's safety. Juliet assures him that the outside is not safe, recounting her own experiences. Solo acknowledges the shared fragility of their existence and the uncanny notion that none of them should be alive. Chapter 46. In a dimly lit room filled with intricate diagrams and charts, Lucas stood beside Bernard, captivated by the mysterious surroundings. The diagram on the wall resembled the layout of servers, but its purpose remained unknown. Lucas's curiosity piqued when Bernard revealed that the charts represented their legacy, the silos. Bernard guided Lucas to another room and explained that the world was changing, and not for the better. Lucas couldn't help but wonder if this was all connected to the failed cleaning and Juliet's fate. As Lucas questioned Bernard about the purpose of their discoveries, Bernard handed him a massive book, The Pact and the Order. Lucas was instructed to familiarize himself with its contents, as it held their history and listed protocols for emergencies. Lucas recognized the opening lines of the Pact, but Bernard clarified that the rest was the Order, a comprehensive guide created by those who had experienced the worst. Flipping through its pages, Lucas stumbled upon instructions for various scenarios, from earthquakes to sabotage. He couldn't help but question the origins of this knowledge, to which Bernard cryptically replied, "The one people." The weight of their accumulated wisdom hung heavy in the air. Feeling overwhelmed, Lucas doubted his ability to absorb all this information. Bernard reassured him that he only needed to know what was in the book to access it when needed. Lucas's thoughts drifted to the recent events, and he asked Bernard about the morning's turmoil. With a sense of resignation, Bernard directed him to page 72. Lucas's heart raced as he searched for the relevant section, hoping to prove himself to Bernard. Finally, he found the chilling words, "In case of a failed cleaning, prepare for war." Chapter 47. As Juliet follows Solo through a hidden passageway in the server room floor, she is astounded by what she discovers. Solo leads her into his makeshift home, a cluttered room filled with a mattress, a makeshift kitchen, and shelves stocked with metal canisters. Solo explains that he has lived here alone for 34 years, surviving by eating, sleeping, and taking care of his bodily functions. Juliet, curious about the events that led to Solo's isolation, asks him about what happened 34 years ago. Solo reveals that people went crazy, and it only took one bad day for everything to fall apart. He shares that his father, who was the head of IT, showed him this secret room and gave him the keys before sacrificing himself to create a diversion. As Solo recounts his survival, Juliet realizes the perpetual terror that Solo carries with him. He explains that while there were others who fought and lived in the silo for a while, they eventually perished, and Solo has not found a body in years. He shares that he has found evidence of people fighting over food and women and declares that the rooms they are in are like a silo within a silo, designed to last 10 years. Curious about the meaning of the word silo, Juliet and Solo engage in a conversation about its origins. Solo reveals that a silo was originally an above-ground structure used for storing excess food during times of abundance. He shows Juliet a thick book filled with photographs, one of which depicts silos, reminding Juliet of the building they are currently in. Struggling with the emotions brought upon by isolation, Solo explains how seeds left alone for too long rot and never grow again. Juliet listens as Solo reveals the devastating truth that they, too, are like seeds left too long in the darkness, destined to rot without being able to grow again. As Juliet absorbs Solo's words, she realizes the magnitude of their situation. They are trapped in this underground world, and survival alone is not enough. Determined, she decides that they must find a way to escape this tomb-like existence and discover what lies beyond their limited existence within the silo. Chapter 48. In the tense moments before their rebellion, Nox and his people wait anxiously beyond the stacks of supply. Armed and ready, they hope for a bloodless transfer of power, but they can't ignore the possibility of bad things happening. Nox can sense the fear among his comrades. With his trusty multi-tool in hand, Nox prepares for the upcoming battle. Pieter, leader of the refinery crew, arrives with his team, swapping their usual black mechanical coveralls for blue supply ones. The stairwell is abuzz with activity and whispers, suspicions of their rebellion spreading like wildfire. Despite the doubts, Nox and Pieter gather their allies and prepare for the ascent. As they exchange words, it becomes clear that Pieter believes a smaller, more covert approach would have had a better chance of success. But it's too late for second-guessing now. The plan is in motion. Nox acknowledges that the blackouts have likely begun, and their only option is to make noise and be heard. Nox can't help but wonder if they are becoming the bad people they were warned about or if they are fighting for what is right. The climb is grueling, but Nox checks on his people, feeling the weight of their lives and his decisions. He reflects on the connection they have to past uprisings, finding himself both fearful and convinced of the necessity of their rebellion. As they march, he questions the history they were taught, wondering if they have become the heroes or villains. Chapter 49. Juliet finds herself surrounded by a pile of books and tins, captivated by the wealth of knowledge contained within. Her companion, Solo, explains that these books are not meant to be read in the traditional sense, but rather serve as a backup of everything they know. Curiosity piqued, Juliet follows Solo into another room cluttered with trash. He shows her a set of maps, each displaying a different silo. Solo excitedly points out their own silo, labeled 17, and reveals that it is just one tiny dot on the vast map, representing a fraction of the entire world. Overwhelmed by the magnitude of their isolated existence, Juliet begins to question everything. Solo shares that he once heard from Silo 1, but the connection was brief and they weren't pleased. Intrigued, Juliet implores Solo to show her how to communicate with Silo 1. Solo leads Juliet to a set of wires that run throughout the silo, explaining their purpose and function. Juliet's frustration grows as she realizes how much Solo knows but considers trivial. She expresses her desire to return to her own silo and share the truth with her people. However, Solo is baffled by her longing to go back, as he believes they are better off in their current situation. Nevertheless, Juliet is determined to let her fellow silo dwellers know the truth and make a difference. Juliet discovers a crucial realization. Someone within her own silo must already know about the other silos and the vast world beyond. Fueled by conviction, she demands that Solo share every detail of how he communicated with Silo 1, as she has someone important she needs to call. With eyes dampened by fear, Solo reluctantly agrees, and Juliet prepares to unravel the mysteries and expose the truth hidden within the depths of the silo. Chapter 50. In the depths of the silo, tension and unease hung in the air like a thick fog. Lucas, armed with a powerful rifle, gazed through the shattered glass window of the conference room. The recent chaos and destruction had left him bewildered. Black guns had been brought out. News of people coming from deep within the silo had startled them all. And now they waited, their eyes fixated on the security gate, anticipating the enemy's arrival. Meanwhile, Nox lead a group through the silo's stairwell, focusing on their mission to put an end to the power blackout. As they climbed, they encountered a group of farmers attempting to tap into the power cables. Knox decided to assist them discreetly, allowing 2 members of his team to help while avoiding suspicion. Then, in a sudden and merciless explosion, all the waiting, all the anticipation transformed into terrifying chaos. Steel doors were blown open, gunfire erupted, and bodies fell in a grotesque dance of violence. Lucas witnessed his comrades being torn apart before his eyes, their lives shattered like fragile glass. Amidst the chaos, Lucas, driven by fear and adrenaline, finally fired his rifle. The room became a deadly battleground, bullets tearing through the air as attackers surged forward. Lucas wept as he fought, his tears mingling with the saltiness on his lips. The battle waged on, the clash of metal against flesh ringing through the conference room. With each shot fired, Lucas fought to survive, unaware of the horrors that still awaited him. The room transformed into a theater of bloodshed and desperation as the struggle for control intensified within the bowels of the silo. Chapter 51. As Bernard wakes up to the chaos and destruction around him, his senses are overwhelmed by the aftermath of an attack. Peter Billings desperately tries to get Bernard's attention, his eyes wide with fear and his coveralls stained with blood. Bernard assesses his injuries, finding a bleeding nose and a throbbing head. Peter informs him that 3 men are dead, some wounded, and a few have entered the stairwell where the agonizing sounds of gunfire echo. Bernard realizes his mistake in underestimating the attackers, lamenting his own stupidity and the fact that he placed Lucas in danger. Bernard instructs Peter to fetch Lucas. Lucas, with his rifle slung over his shoulder, is by Bernard's side in an instant. Lucas reassures Bernard that their side has the upper hand, but Bernard insists that Lucas stays underground for his safety. As they make their way through the smoky hallways, Bernard tells Lucas that the consequences will be far-reaching beyond their immediate location. Lucas reluctantly understands, and they continue on their mission. Lucas leads Bernard to the server room. Bernard leans against a wall, trying to steady himself, while Lucas unlocks the server. But Bernard is too disoriented to notice the flashing code on the panel or the ringing in his ears, which is a result of the fire alarm. Lucas remarks about the noise, pointing to the ceiling, and Bernard finally registers the sound. Bernard rushes toward the back of the server room, pushing Lucas aside. He reaches for his cloth pouch, pulls out the headset, and hastily puts it on. With the jack inserted, he dials a number, but quickly cancels the call. In his panic, Bernard realizes that it wasn't the correct slot, but the light above the slot labeled 17 is blinking. A dead silo is calling him. With a sense of disbelief and trepidation, Bernard inserts the jack into the correct slot and cautiously whispers into the microphone. A voice on the other end responds, asking if he is who they think he is. Bernard demands to know who is calling and how they have access to the servers. The voice accuses Bernard of sending them out to die. Overwhelmed by a mix of emotions, Bernard slumps down while Lucas holds him up. The voice continues, taunting and blaming Bernard for their fate. As the voice threatens to come after him, Bernard is paralyzed by the realization of who it is. In his disbelief, he shouts back at the ghost, but the voice commands him to listen carefully. Bernard braces himself for what comes next, the promise of the voice's return, to come home and seek revenge.